Angela Harris entered the upscale restaurant, her heels making a confident yet composed rhythm against the polished wooden floor. The ambience of the room greeted her warmly, filled with soft golden lighting, the occasional clink of glasses, and low, pleasant murmurs of conversation. This wasn't just any dining spot. It was a testament to years of her son Chris's dedication and ambition. Angela paused briefly, taking it all in. The pride she felt was immeasurable. Chris, her boy, had poured his heart into this establishment, crafting not just a restaurant but a sanctuary where people could gather, dine, and connect. Tonight held special meaning. Chris had invited her to celebrate both her accomplishments and his success. Although he was tied up in the kitchen, Angela knew he would join her soon. True to his character, Chris didn't advertise his role as the owner. He believed actions spoke louder than titles. Angela approached the hostess stand, where she was greeted warmly. "Table for one?" the hostess asked, smiling. "Yes, but my son will join me later," Angela replied, her smile polite but radiant. The hostess led her to a cozy window-side table, offering a breathtaking view of the city lights twinkling against the evening sky. As Angela settled in, she allowed herself to bask in the moment, a blend of pride, joy, and gratitude. But as the minutes ticked by, that warmth began to waver. A waitress approached, her face sharp and her posture stiff. There was no warmth, no welcoming gesture like what Angela had just experienced at the entrance. "Water?" the waitress asked, her tone clipped, her eyes not even meeting Angela's. "Yes, please," Angela said, still maintaining her grace and politeness, offering a warm smile in return. The waitress returned shortly after, setting the glass of water down with an audible clunk that made Angela blink. The gesture wasn't hostile, but it carried a deliberate carelessness that left Angela feeling slightly uneasy. "I'll start with the house salad and then have the grilled salmon," Angela said calmly, ordering her meal. The waitress jotted it down quickly and walked off without a word or even the courtesy of eye contact. Angela couldn't help but frown slightly. Moments later, she observed the same waitress attending another table, her demeanor completely transformed, bright, lively, and friendly. The stark contrast didn't escape Angela, but she resolved not to let it bother her. Tonight was meant to be a celebration, after all. As the evening progressed, Angela finished her salad, but her main course was nowhere to be seen. Across the restaurant, she saw other tables being served promptly. Diners who had arrived long after her were already enjoying their meals. A young couple even received their entree with cheerful banter from a smiling server who topped off their drinks. Meanwhile, Angela's plate remained missing, and the knot in her stomach tightened. Her eyes fell upon her waitress, who stood near the counter, laughing casually with another diner. Angela raised her hand to catch her attention. The waitress hesitated, rolled her eyes in irritation, and finally strolled over. "Yes?" she asked, her tone dripping with disinterest. Angela, maintaining her composure, responded politely. "I've been waiting for my entree for quite some time now. Could you please check on it?" The waitress shrugged indifferently. "The kitchen's busy. It'll be out when it's ready." Angela's patience thinned, but her voice remained steady. "I understand that the kitchen can be busy. However, I've noticed that other tables, which arrived after me, have already been served." The waitress smirked. "Maybe they didn't order something complicated. Salmon takes a while, you know?" Angela didn't back down. "I'm fairly certain salmon doesn't take 30 minutes to prepare." With an exaggerated sigh, the waitress turned on her heel. "Fine, I'll check," she said dismissively. 10 more minutes dragged on. Angela watched as other patrons continued to receive their meals, their laughter and conversation creating a stark contrast to her own growing frustration. When the waitress finally returned, her attitude was no better. "Well?" Angela asked, her tone still polite but now firm. "It's still not ready," the waitress said, crossing her arms. Angela leaned forward slightly. "Can you explain why tables that ordered after me have already been served?" The waitress let out a harsh laugh. "Maybe they don't sit here nitpicking every little thing." Angela inhaled deeply, keeping her composure intact. "I believe your job involves providing the same level of service to all customers." The waitress scoffed. "Look, I'll tell the kitchen you're upset, but it's not like that's going to speed things up. Angela's grip on her napkin tightened as her patience reached its breaking point. Perhaps you should consider how your attitude reflects on this establishment. The waitress rolled her eyes. You people always want to act like the world owes you something. Angela froze, her breath catching in her throat. Excuse me? The waitress leaned in slightly, a smug smirk on her face. You heard me. Some of us work hard for what we have. Others just expect it handed to them. Angela's voice was steady but cold. I'd like to speak to the manager. The waitress laughed mockingly. Of course you would. People like you are always so quick to complain. Angela's jaw tightened. And what exactly do you mean by people like me? The waitress tilted her head, her smirk widening. You know exactly what I mean. Before Angela could respond, a sharp voice cut through the tension like a knife. What's going on here? Angela turned to see Chris standing behind the waitress, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. Relief flooded her as her son stepped into the situation, his presence commanding the room. The waitress spun around, her face pale. Nothing. Just a misunderstanding. Chris's gaze was steely. I'd like to hear it from the customer. Angela turned to her son, drawing strength from his unwavering presence. She met his gaze, her voice calm but firm. It seems the waitress forgot to place my order, and then decided to make the experience personal with inappropriate remarks. Chris's jaw tightened visibly, his eyes flickering with a mix of disappointment and anger. He turned his gaze to the waitress, who was now fidgeting nervously, unable to maintain eye contact. My office. Now, Chris said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Wait, the waitress began to protest, but Chris's sharp look cut her off. Now, he repeated. Angela rose from her seat as Chris gestured for her to follow. She trailed behind her son, her heels clicking softly against the floor, a sound that contrasted sharply with the growing tension in the air. As they reached Chris's office, the waitress hesitated at the door but eventually stepped inside, her discomfort evident. Chris leaned against the desk, his arms crossed, his expression cold. Let's hear it, he said, his voice steady but firm. The waitress shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for a way out. Look, this is all just a misunderstanding, she stammered. She got upset because her food was taking too long. That's all. Chris's gaze didn't waver. That's not what I heard. Angela stepped forward, her tone steady. Forgetting my order is one thing, and I would have understood if it was simply a mistake. But your comments about people like me were deliberate and uncalled for. The waitress's face flushed. I didn't mean it like that, she muttered, avoiding eye contact. Chris's tone turned icy. Then explain exactly what you did mean. The waitress fumbled for words. I don't know. It just came out, she said weakly. Chris straightened, his voice calm but cutting. No one accidentally says things like that. Those words reflect an attitude, a choice to treat a customer with disrespect. And let me be clear, this isn't just about a forgotten order or a delayed meal. This is about how you represent this restaurant and the values it stands for. The waitress opened her mouth to speak, but faltered under Chris's unyielding stare. Wait, your mother? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Chris's eyes narrowed. Yes, but it shouldn't matter whether she's my mother or a first-time customer. Every person who walks through those doors deserves respect, regardless of who they are. Angela added, her voice unwavering. Respect isn't optional. It's the foundation of any establishment that hopes to thrive. Chris nodded in agreement and turned back to the waitress. This isn't the first complaint I've received about your attitude, but tonight was the last straw. You're done here. The waitress's jaw dropped in disbelief. Wait, you're firing me? Chris's tone was final. I'm letting you go because your behavior doesn't align with the standards of this restaurant. This isn't just about your words. It's about your choices. And tonight, you showed me that you don't belong here. The waitress looked around the room, perhaps hoping for sympathy or support, but the silence was damning. She finally stormed out of the office, her footsteps echoing angrily down the hall. Chris turned to his mother, his shoulders sagging slightly as the tension of the confrontation began to fade. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice filled with regret. Angela smiled gently, placing a hand on his arm. "You don't need to apologize, Chris. You handled it perfectly. This isn't just about my dinner. It's about the kind of place you've built. And tonight, you proved that this restaurant stands for something more than just food. It stands for values, respect, and integrity." Chris nodded, his expression softening. "I'll make sure the staff understands that respect isn't just expected, it's required. This won't happen again." Angela squeezed his hand. "I believe you, and I'm proud of the way you stood up for what's right." They returned to the dining area, where the staff, now aware of the incident, had rallied to make things right. Angela's meal was promptly delivered by a server who was warm and attentive, apologizing profusely for the earlier mishap. As Angela savored her perfectly cooked salmon, she looked across the room and saw her son moving between tables, greeting guests with his signature humility and charm. The other diners, unaware of the earlier drama, smiled and laughed as Chris ensured everyone felt at home. Angela's heart swelled with pride. Chris wasn't just a talented chef or a savvy businessman. He was a leader, someone who understood the importance of treating every individual with dignity. When the evening finally came to a close, Chris returned to Angela's table, pulling out the chair beside her. "How was the salmon?" he asked with a smile. "Perfect," Angela replied, her eyes shining with pride. "But the real highlight of tonight wasn't the food. It was seeing the man you've become." Chris chuckled, a hint of bashfulness in his expression. "You've always taught me that values matter more than anything else. I'm just trying to live up to that." Angela reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "You're doing more than living up to it. You're building something truly remarkable, and I couldn't be prouder." As they sat together, the city lights twinkling in the background, Angela knew this evening would remain etched in her memory. It wasn't just a celebration of milestones. It was a testament to the power of integrity, the strength of family, and the enduring importance of respect.